Hey everyone, welcome on. I'm introducing you to yet another one of our subject matter experts who is sitting in front of a beautiful collection of scarves. That's a whole different story. But David Dysart is kind of the face of our Slate practice, right, David? You've been a fan of the Slate product, even when you were working at an institution. Tell us the quick story behind that, kind of what made you fall in love with that product. And then I want to talk to you about two things. What are some of the basic things Slate does, which is why most people buy it? But then you've uncovered some things it can do that are like mind bending to some extent. So I want to talk about that too. But first things first, set the table of where you were when you kind of fell in love with this product and started to really tinker with it and get behind the scenes on it.
Yeah, while I was in grad school and afterwards, I worked in institutional research, left higher education for a bit, and then found a really great opportunity in the Office of Admission at an institution. And they were using Slate, and it was a revelation working with
Hmm.
different CRMs, SISs, things like that. The way that it could empower staff and institutions to do things, especially someone like me who's like very techno functional, it just opened up a lot of doors. It fit the way my brain worked, and it was just a good platform for a lot of great tools that could be built.
So let's talk about what if I was a school, right? If I was a decision maker at a school, what are the typical reasons a school is buying Slate and what are some of the typical use cases and how they're using it? Kind of like out of the box, table stake stuff.
Whether that's doing student recruitment, admissions, operations, student success, advancement, it really allows you to roll in a lot of different systems and vendors to do like events, emails, and text messages. There's so much you can even just do with the data to drive your day to day and strategic
Hmm.
processes that it can really become an integral part of that system of systems approach that so many institutions are getting on board for.
Why most schools is that why most schools are buying it, or are most schools just buying it to have a CRM for recruiting? That's my sense of why most
Mm.
people say, "Oh, we're going to buy Slate." Is it's going to help us with recruiting and all those that functionality. They don't necessarily recognize all the other stuff it can do.
Yeah, and I think it really resonates with recruiting because it is so powerful in using whether it's biodemographic data, engagement data to start crafting a really beautiful student journey and tailored communications and student experiences. But then you start understanding what's under the hood and you start seeing like, oh, this is great for just automation, for processing on the back end, for empowering staff to be able to save their time, understand their students better. And then it opens up even further like, oh, student success is getting a peek at what you can do through onboarding. So they want to start building early alert systems, and advancement sees how powerful of a tool it is. And again, it just keeps expanding broader and broader at the institutions that it typically finds a home at.
Hmm. So let's assume an institution has already deployed it with really admissions in mind, right? What
Hmm.
are a couple of use cases, a step over from admissions? Give us a couple of examples or use cases somewhere else in the institution where it could be used that schools may not have thought of yet.
Yeah, I mean, I love doing predictive modeling in Slate. So we're actually building the model directly in Slate itself. So you can start tweaking, like, oh, if we got the student to attend admitted student day, or if we got the student to take this additional class, how does that affect how likely they are to apply, enroll, be retained? And it's a really empowering way to start looking at your student experience at the institution. But like when I was at my previous institution, just moving things like new student onboarding through the summertime was such an empowering aspect. We took down the silos because now communication started going through Slate, and admission professionals who like they're contacting these students every day. They know how to
Yeah,
craft an email that really resonates with them. So we're
yeah.
able to collaborate better
So you
because
piggyback
we're in
those
that shared
emails.
ecosystem.
Yeah. And so and you're saying at that particular institution, the heavy lift of onboarding got moved to the Slate experience and it gave you better data, it sounds like. So, what's
Oh
some of the
yeah,
data you guys get to see because you're moving some of those very manual, let's call them in person experiences that don't get tracked well to a Slate like environment?
yeah, even things as simple as sending emails back and forth to the institute from the institution and the student starts being tracked in Slate, so we can start looking at how the student is engaging with us, how that engagement maybe stops, and like, oh, we need to reach out to the student because they were extremely engaged with us over the last 6 months, and then they got their financial aid award letter, and now all of a sudden it's a ghost town. So we need to understand like who are the students we need to engage with, And during like that onboarding piece, so like being able to move a new housing application form. Now we're starting to see like, oh, the student still hasn't filled this out, or the student has these specific preferences that we're able to service better because now we're able to match with other students who are in the incoming class. It really allows us to start building a network of data and offices that can use the data.
One of the things you had mentioned to me in passing, and it really stuck out to me, correct me if I'm wrong, when you were at your previous institution, you had actually engineered your Slate system there to actually do predictive modeling on student populations for recruitment, right? Where you would kind of start to figure out, hey, certain zip codes, certain combination of criteria of this persona of student helped you better predict which student was going to come to your institution and which one wasn't. Am I right in that? Did you do some playing with that? Talk us through that real quick.
Yeah, and this could be information that you're either getting directly from your historical records, maybe you're getting a vendor who provides neighborhood information, you're using the Slate delivered, like what percentages are of this population is getting bachelor degrees for like, or master's degree attainment kind of stuff. And it starts allowing you to understand your student populations more than
Hmm.
just what they're actually telling you in like a request for information form or in the application. So we can start understanding the trends and the overlapping personas that start developing in your student population to whether it's predictive modeling or crafting better communications and portal experiences that speak genuinely to the
To
student
that
or at
specific
least
persona.
to that specific student. And they might not even have told us that, like, oh, yeah, I plan to go into grad school after this. But if we know a large portion of that student's neighborhood, family, if their friends typically go on to grad school, we can start crafting a narrative that might speak to them or at least speak
See
to
that?
people they know.
See, that's powerful. I don't know how many schools out there have reached this level of sophistication of marketing yet. And they've got and many of them have the engine of Slate. They just haven't gotten Slate to do the things it can do. Is there any other aspect of Slate you want to draw people's attention to where they go, oh my gosh, I had no idea I could use Slate in that use case or this other use case? Suddenly our investment into the product feels like pennies on the dollar, right? What other
Yeah.
departments can benefit and how?
Yeah, and just one last note on that. Like, Slate's also great on doing automations through communication. So we're not like handcrafting, like, oh, this, I'm going to type this email to this
To
student based on the
Joe.
data. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're building it through like content blocks and drip campaigns to individualize the emails without individual effort. We're starting to understand the student and it's automatically built into our emails. And again,
Wow.
it's a very techno-functional system where you're not having to, again, I'm writing the SQL or conditional logic. It's really integrated into the day-to-day. But the other offices and other use cases, like, I mean, even student success and just working with current students, making recommendations for courses for the students that are
Mm.
either going to be like, oh, we think you might enjoy this class, or these are classes that are still on your to-do list. There's so much flexibility in the tools that we have and how we can stitch together the data to deliver a really individualized student experience for hundreds, perhaps thousands of students that Slate's doing all the work on the back end.
Yeah, and we're not talking about a system that costs millions of dollars to buy or maintain or any of it. It's like super economical. It's just maybe they just need people like you to come help them think about the art of the possible. And sometimes they may have the technical capability in house to then just go build it, or you and your team can build it for them. But it's usually 5 weeks, 6 weeks. I've noticed some of the projects you've been doing are quick, and it's not months and years to start seeing the outcomes.
No, and there's so many places to learn about projects like this, whether it's through the webinars, community conversations, the
Mm.
forums, just the groups on Facebook and Slack. You're going to find answers to questions you don't even have yet in these
Hmm.
places. And you'll get like, oh,
Just
they're
listen
doing
in, right?
this. Yeah. Like, oh, they're doing this for student success. But if we take this feature or this functionality and move it over to the admissions or advancement world, I can build a really customized carousel portal when students are going to college fairs that like I wouldn't have thought of because I'm not a JavaScript expert, but like, oh, it's a simple piece of code that we can just migrate into a portal. It's really interesting to see how the community really shapes and evolves what's possible with Slate.
How can a school best leverage you and your team, David? Is it just have a conversation, do kind of a mini workshop, maybe you do that at no cost. And then if they want to engage you, they can. But is that a good first step, is just come hear about the art of the possible, tell you what they're doing with Slate, and then have you say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? What about this? And kind of play that out.
Yeah, we have our monthly workshops we've been doing on predictive modeling and engagement scoring. But really, it's understanding like what is a pain point or what's an outcome? What do you want to happen for your students to create a better experience? And then we can reverse engineer so much through Slate. And we can start understanding like, oh, okay, you want this experience or you want this to happen at this time. Well, here is 3 mini projects that will get you that exact outcome you want, or perhaps something even higher or better because you didn't
Right.
know it was even possible with a system
I think
like
that's
Slate.
what it is. If I was sitting in their seat, I may not know what's possible. I may have bought the Lamborghini and I'm driving it around like a bicycle. And you can
Exactly.
help us see the potential for the product. Whether they go after it or not, at least they know what they have. So thank you, David. That's great. I think you've got people's minds spinning. Certainly they should come and listen to your monthly workshops. A lot of them are archived, right? They can go watch previous recordings on our YouTube channel, catch up on that, and then connect with David on LinkedIn, and we'll continue the journey with you. Thanks, everyone, for being on.
Great, Joe. Thanks, everyone.